The home of George Washington and Thomas Jefferson is center stage in the war on woke. All eyes are locked on Virginia, where a crucial race for Attorney General and Governor this November could decide the fate of a nation. I'm Hayden Ludwig. Heaven and earth never agreed better to frame a place for man's habitation as Virginia. So uttered Captain John Smith, founder of the first American settlement at Jamestown. For 4 centuries, the mother of states has loomed large in national politics, but perhaps never so large as now, with the Old Dominion squarely set in Democrats' sights. Should Democrats succeed in winning Virginia's crucial races in 2025, they will roll back education freedom, curtail gun rights, drive up gas prices, and unleash a violent crime wave fueled by illegal alien gangs that we may never recover from. Standing in the way of that chaos is Attorney General Jason Miyares, who joins us at the peak of election season. Attorney General Miyares, we're grateful for your time on Restoration Spotlight.
Great to be with you. Thanks so much for having me.
Now, crime rose dramatically in Virginia under the Biden administration and your predecessor, Mark Herring, who boasted of prioritizing transgenderism and the marijuana industry even as murder rates and car theft skyrocketed. Now, sir, you're top cop. Tell us how things have changed since you took office in 2021.
Well, listen, we're still dealing with challenges of bad policies that were put in place by the Ralph Northam, Mark Herring administration. But, when I took office, as you've noted, Virginia's murder rate was at a 20-year high. Our violent crime rate was at a decade high. Our addiction death rate was at numbers we hadn't seen in 30, 40 years. And we rolled up our sleeves, and it's a really novel idea. We decided, the Youngkin administration, myself, Winsome Sears, we're going to stand with law enforcement instead of against law enforcement. We're going to put forth common sense policies. And so the first couple months of my term as Attorney General, I did a really novel idea. I just ran around and I met with law enforcement and those community leaders and say, what are you saying in your community? What do you see that we can do to change the trajectory of these unacceptable levels of violent crime? And we then worked with the governor. We launched something called Operation Ceasefire in our 13 most violent cities. And it's this novel idea: go after repeat violent offenders. Roughly 5% of felons commit over 50% of the violent felonies. If you want to lower violent crime, that is the most effective way. You have to investigate, you have to indict and prosecute. So I took attorney generals, assistant AGs out of my office, and I placed them where they were taking these cases to federal court, because in some of these localities, you have left-wing local district attorneys that refuse to do their job. And we decided to do their job for them in some ways. And the numbers have been staggering. As a staggering success story, in our targeted ceasefire cities, we saw a drop of the murder rate of over 60%.
Wow.
Leading to a 1/3 drop overall statewide. And so it was a very, very smart standing with police, give them the tools they need to do their jobs. Yes, go after the repeat violent offenders, prosecute them, get them off our streets. And we've seen some fantastic results so far of what we've done. And we've also seen a huge drop on the addiction deaths as well. So we really view ourselves as the Attorney General, as the people's protector. That's the role we take quite seriously in our office. We're proud of the work we've done. And as I've often told my staff, if you can measure it, you can improve it. And we have seen great improvement on the initiatives we've undertaken in our office, keeping Virginians safe.
Now, these days, crime is inextricably linked to the border. And after 4 years of open border chaos, we have been flooded, well, to the effect that Virginia now feels like a border state. I grew up in a border state. I know exactly what that feels like. And even though we're thousands of miles away, we are inundated by cartel thugs, gang members from Tren de Aragua, MS-13. The numbers that I've seen, your office has been cooperating with ICE since January and the new Trump administration took office. You've already arrested some 3,000 violent criminals here illegally. Give us a sense of how you're improving things with the help of ICE and removing these illegal aliens from our Commonwealth.
Well, to give your listeners an idea of where we were versus where we are now, during the Biden administration, there were 8.2 million illegal crossings into the United States. That is roughly the size, that's a population larger than the size of 32 U.S. states. It was unlike anything we'd ever seen before. And I would get the reports from Homeland Security And it was just stunning. It was stunning, the lawlessness, and then the number of individuals that were stopped, that were actually apprehended. Over 80% of those were given essentially like a traffic ticket. They were told, "We'll see you in court 4 or 5 years from now." If you get stopped on the highway, they'll say, "We'll see you in court 4 or 5 months." For those crossing to our country illegally, they were given a ticket saying, "You're going to have an asylum hearing in 2029 or 2030. That was the absurd policies that were put forth by the Biden administration. And now the numbers are night and day difference. The security we've had on the border just shows that we didn't need a new bill. We needed a new president, absolute new leadership we've had on the border. So the border has largely gotten secure. And so ICE has primarily focused on two categories: those that are here illegally, that have committed criminal acts. And then there are 1.4 million illegal immigrants in this country that have already had an asylum hearing. In other words, they've been in front of a federal judge, they pled their case, and they've been ordered by a judge: "You have no case, you need to leave the country." 1.4 million people ordered by a judge to leave the country, that the Biden administration did nothing. And so those are another category of individuals that the administration is trying to essentially comply with a court order that has been ignored under the Biden administration. It was a spirit of lawlessness. And so you are correct. Almost every state has become a border state. We have seen it. We saw the explosion of TDA and MS-13, particularly in Northern Virginia, D.C. metro area. Many of them will have an unholy alliance with the Sinaloa cartel, which in my opinion is one of the most, they are the most dangerous criminal enterprise in the history of the globe.
That was El Chapo's cartel, incidentally. Yes.
Right. And they give people perspective. The Italian mafia of the five, the different families, they maybe generate revenue a year, a couple $100 million total of all the different mafia groups. Just the Sinaloa cartel estimated revenue a year is between $38 and $40 billion a year. It's like a small nation state. They are ruthless. And so MS-13 and TDA, not just are they're drug mules and drug trafficking, human trafficking. That's the world's second largest criminal enterprise. Most people don't realize that. That's $150 billion a year in revenue globally in human trafficking. And so it is an amazing exploitation of the vulnerable. And so, yeah, we have had the attitude as a people's protector of going after these illegals that are committing these crimes, or those that have already been told they need to leave. And you've seen a real difference between those that take it seriously and those that don't, because the reality is, every time a innocent Virginian is victimized by somebody who has broken the law, come in here illegally, it's just tragic. It's heartbreaking to see it, because they realize it's directly related to bad policies from the Biden administration that allowed them to come in to begin with.
Well, speaking of those who don't take the crime and border seriously, let's talk about your opponent, Jay Jones. It is an election year right now. He's running to take your spot as Virginia's top cop here. Two bills that stand out that he voted on in the House of Delegates. One grants in-state college tuition to people living here illegally, not just violent criminals, anybody living here illegally as non-citizens. And another that would remove the requirement for jails to report inmates' immigration status to ICE officials. In other words, sanctuary defense of illegal aliens. What does that say about how seriously Jones takes the border and the explosion in crime that Democrat policies created over the last 4 years?
Well, it shows that Jay Jones, number one, he wants to be Virginia's top prosecutor, but he's never prosecuted a case in his entire life, in his entire legal career. One, it shows his inexperience. Two, his entire career as being a far left-wing social justice warrior. He's the most left-wing candidate to ever run for attorney general in Virginia. And when you look at the in-state tuition issue, our in-state tuition is subsidized by taxpayers. You get that rate versus out-of-state students, because you are a Virginia resident that's paid Virginia taxes, and therefore you get that reduced tuition rate. I'm a proud product of Virginia schools. I think it shows how out of touch. I like the joke that Jay Jones should be running for Attorney General of California, not Virginia, because his policies are on the left coast, not common sense Virginia. But listen, what the point you made about not allowing sheriffs to then cooperate with ICE. I've seen this with my own two eyes. I went last year with ICE because I just wanted to see what was happening. And I did a ride along, met them at 4 a.m. in the morning. There were 6 or 7 individuals that they were looking to apprehend. They were all individuals that were here illegally, that had committed a crime, that had been in our jails, and then were allowed to just walk out of the jail without ever notifying ICE. I saw an individual that had a possession with intent to distribute. In other words, he was here illegally and he was dealing drugs. Another individual that had illegal weapons, that were here illegally with illegal weapons. And the third was an individual that had been arrested on a rape charge, MS-13 member, arrested on a rape charge, here illegally. A liberal judge then gave him bond, and rather than notifying ICE, they were able to just walk out of that jail cell. And I saw it with my own 2 eyes when they needed to try to apprehend him. He ended up, at that time, a school bus rounded around the corner. He ended up running right past all these kids. The amount of resources that go into place, they had to get 6 federal agents to try to track this MS-13 accused rapist down. And it just goes to show all that could have been prevented. Thank goodness there wasn't a child that was hurt in that incident. But it just goes to show all that could have been stopped if they simply notified ICE and let them know what was happening. And they refused to do so. So what I would argue is any local sheriff that is refusing to cooperate with ICE, your first job is the safety and security and the protection of your citizens. Having that policy where you're not cooperating does not make a single one of your citizens more safe. It makes them less safe. And Jay Jones supports this policy of allowing, in this case, an accused MS-13 rapist just to walk out of the jail. And so it is that type of catch and release mentality that he supports because, again, he's never been a prosecutor. He's always had a career standing against law enforcement instead of with law enforcement. And that's the person that you do not want in a position as the top cop, as the top prosecutor for the Commonwealth of Virginia.
So data shows that Virginia may have more sanctuary jurisdictions, counties and cities, than any other state in the Union, certainly conservative-leaning states in the South. Now, in 2018, Jones voted against a Republican bill that would have prohibited sanctuary counties. That means he was voting for preserving sanctuaries here. Now, your office, Governor Youngkin's office, Lieutenant Governor Sears' office have worked to stop sanctuary cities only for Democrats in the House of Delegates and the Senate to remove those provisions from the budget, basically cut them out altogether. What did that say about how seriously these guys take this problem when poll after poll shows Virginia voters consider this to be the top issue among law enforcement, among the governor's race, and certainly your race for attorney general? Are they just disconnected? Do they want more criminals in the Commonwealth? What's your thought?
Well, it's a criminal first, victim last mindset. I served in the General Assembly actually with Jay Jones. You'd have all these debates on, quote unquote, criminal justice reform. And the one word they never mentioned was victims. They never talked about victims.
Interesting.
That's his entire record, right? He voted to end the mandatory reporting requirement of sexual assault in schools, which directly led to the disaster, what happened in Loudoun. He thought 60 days in jail for somebody who's a repeat domestic abuser, a repeat wife beater. He thought that was too harsh of a sentence. He thought 12 months in prison for somebody who deals drugs to a child on school property. He thought that was too harsh of a sentence. But probably the most damning was he was the champion and he voted for and advocated for the Northam felon early release program. Before Ralph Northam, we had truth in sentencing that you had to serve roughly 85 or 90% of your sentence before you would even be eligible for parole. They completely erased that in Virginia. They passed this bill that essentially gives you just years off your sentence if you're a convicted felon. And Jones advocated regardless of the category of crime. Well, what we have seen, we have tried to get back to truth in sentencing. It dies every year on a partisan vote. Just in fiscal year 2023, we saw 9,638 felons out early from release because of the Jay Jones Northam early release program. That's just since within the 2 years, over close to 59%, 49.8% of them have been rearrested. We have over 50 Virginians that have been murdered by felons that got out early because they allowed their would-be murderer back on the street. We have close to 100 Virginians that have been raped or sexually assaulted by felons that were allowed by Jay Jones and Ralph Northam back on the street. We have over 100 robberies that have occurred by Virginia victims that have been victimized because their felon was allowed back on the street. That is the criminal first, victim last mindset of Jay Jones. So it shouldn't surprise you that he supports this idea of punishing sheriffs and prohibiting sheriffs from cooperating cooperating with ICE, who are trying to keep Virginians safe.
Let's talk about a related issue, and that is drugs. So, as you know, Virginia was ground zero for the expansion of OxyContin a few decades ago. In fact, the top 3 counties for overprescribing synthetic opioids, legal synthetic opioids like OxyContin, are here in Virginia. Now, there's been a massive explosion in drugs that have crossed the border illegal, like fentanyl, that are created by these cartels, building on drug addiction created by legal big pharma pills manufactured and sold in Virginia here. And yet, if you look at the record, your opponent Jones says that enforcing the law against these kinds of drugs is racist. What do you say to that?
Again, it shows that he should be running for Attorney General of California and not Virginia. In
Certainly.
fact, when we had a bill that would say if you're a fentanyl dealer dealing fentanyl to a victim that leads to their death, you could charge them with felony homicide. That's like giving someone rat poison. It's 50 times more powerful than heroin. Jones voted against that. He sided with fentanyl dealers over victims. And you're right about one of the things that Virginia was the epicenter in many ways, the start of the addiction crisis that affected our entire country. Started in Virginia. You had some of the largest pharmaceutical companies on the planet. He went out in the coal fields, the rich lands and the Southwest Virginia and coal mining communities and said, hey, we have this great new pain pill for work-related injuries or sports-related injuries. It's called OxyContin, but don't you worry, it's not addicting. And now we know that they knew. They knew they were pushing one of the most addictive chemical substances known to man. And it blew up nationwide, but it started in Virginia. And a lot of those that got caught in the cycle of addiction then graduated to heroin and now fentanyl. And it led to addiction deaths unlike anything we've ever seen. And so what we're proud of in Virginia is we went after these pharmaceutical companies. Some of the largest settlements we've ever had in Virginia history is from my office bringing these suits against Purdue Pharma and others, over $1.4 billion in settlements. And that money goes to in-person treatment. So Governor Youngkin and I had the attitude of, we're going to go after the suppliers, we're going to go after the dealers as much as we can. We're going to prosecute them, but also we're going to go after the demand and get people back on their feet, beat the addiction. And so I'm very proud of the fact I was able to stand with Governor Youngkin and announce that Virginia was not top 10, not top 5, but the #1 state in the country in the drop in addiction deaths. And that didn't happen by accident. That was a holistic approach. You have to go after the dealers. You have to make sure the fentanyl dealers are told, we're going to come after you. You have to help those dealing with addiction. But that's just not the Jay Jones approach. He has a soft on crime, a criminal first, victim last mindset, where he just decides, I think these penalties for these dealers killing so many of our fellow Virginians, that's too harsh. And I can tell you this, there is no cry as powerful as the cry of a mother that has lost her child. And I have met with these families. I've met with those that have lost their children to addiction. And there is not a penalty, I think, harsh enough for those that are dealing this poison to our kids and robbing these moms and their dads of their precious loved ones.
We're short on time, sir, so I want to pivot to schools as we close out here. Your office has launched investigations into a case of alleged assault in Loudoun County by a male calling himself a trans female. Bring us up to speed on that case.
Well, that was the infamous case back in 2021. We're proud of our investigation. We're proud of what we discovered. This was a case of a student that put on a skirt, walked into a bathroom, violently sexually assaulted a 15-year-old girl, and then was transferred to another school where another sexual assault took place. We're proud of what we have discovered. We're proud of the grand jury report that we unsealed to allow the public to be told. And I think it was an amazing moment to see where the school district the failures that occurred. And I thought one of the most damning piece of information from our investigation was when the sexual assault happened in the bathroom against this 15-year-old girl, a teacher actually walked in on the sexual assault while it was happening and did nothing. And when they were asked under oath why they didn't do anything, they said, well, because it's not that unusual to see 2 pairs of legs in a bathroom stall in a school bathroom. Well, think about our experience growing up. I mean, you get caught smoking in the bathroom, you're going to the principal's office. The idea that you would then have that spirit where that's not that big of a deal, I thought it shows a little bit of why Virginia under Governor Youngkin became the epicenter of the Parents Matter movement really
Yes.
started in Virginia, and not just there. I mean, I remember one of our first cases I had as Attorney General was litigating this novel idea where you as a parent decide whether your child has to wear a mask for 8 hours a day in school, not an
Right.
unelected administrator. So we're proud of putting back parents at the forefront. That's actually in Virginia law that parents have a fundamental right to the education and upbringing of our kids. And I will always vigorously defend parents' rights as Attorney General.
Let's last question here. Let's talk about your lawsuit against Meta. Speaking of schools here, you've called the screen time with social media like Facebook and Instagram, which are owned by Meta, behavioral cocaine. I'm a parent. I know millions of parents are very concerned about this kind of addictive screen time for very young children, not teenagers, 5-year-olds. Talk to us about that.
Well, I think that's the big challenge of our time. That is an ongoing investigation and case that we have, not just them, but also TikTok. But the reality is so many of these social media companies intentionally targeted our children, even though they had executives testifying in Congress they were not doing so. That's not true. They were advertising on PBS Kids and other children's show. And in many ways, they acted very similar to Big Tobacco. If you recall 30, 40 years ago, it turned out that Big Tobacco had created Joe Camel, a cartoon, and all their advertising because they realized they got children interested in smoking. And they realized if I can get a teenager at 14, 15, or 16 smoking, I have them as a customer for a decade, 2 decades. Same attitude with big tech. They had the attitude of, if I can get a child on an app, I have that child, not just them as a client, but the greatest driver of parents using an app is if their child has an app, they will download it because they want to try to monitor what their child is doing. So they intentionally target kids. And we know that the more times you spend on social media, the higher your rates of addiction and depression and anxiety, partially because social media creates a very artificial image of what the world really is. But we've seen that. So we're proud of where we are. That is an ongoing investigation, so I'm somewhat limited in what I can say. But our job as Attorney General, as the people's protector, is not just to go after criminal misconduct, but also corporate misconduct. We're really proud of what we've done right now on corporate misconduct on the pharmaceutical side. And right now we have our aim on big tech as well.
Well, General Miyares, thank you so much for your time and good luck in the race.
Great to be with you. See you on the trail ahead.
I'm Hayden Ludwig, and this is Restoration Spotlight, a project of Restoration News, your source of headline-smashing investigative journalism for the America First movement. Check us out at restoration-news.com. Until next time, stay vigilant and trust in God.